Won't sugarcoat this, King 9 Will Not Return was initially an episode I didn't like until the big twist totally subverted my expectations. For realsies! This plot reminds me of the Haunting Hours toy train, mostly because it's a tale which starts out boring, but as soon as more gets revealed, it blew up into an incredibly deep experience that earned my appreciation. In this tale of wartime terror, we follow an Air Force soldier named Captain James Embry, whose bomber got shot down and crash-landed somewhere on the African beach. However, Embry finds himself all alone in unknown territory, desperately searching for his crew, as his unit has mysteriously disappeared. Almost the entire episode takes place at this really haunting crash site, where our hero tries to seek out answers, as well as his fellow troopers, finding nothing, not even a corpse. The setting is easily the creepiest part of all, since the wrecked airplanes, debris, and pure silence create a very uneasy feeling throughout. Even our veteran protagonist grows paranoid, since he can't remember how this happened. To make matters worse, Embry begins hallucinating his lost officers, but before he can ever reach them, they quickly vanish, slowly revealing that the isolation is getting to the captain's mind. This being a horror show, it's so suspenseful if Embry's men are merely a mirage or real ghosts. One of the only problems I have with this amazing setup is that the pacing is kinda slow. 90% of the episode is just our single hero wandering around the scary battle ruins, looking for somebody, only to find nothing, and realize how lost he truly is. It's super effective, but also makes the plot drag at times. Though I will say, this is a vastly superior version of Where Is Everybody, as our protagonist gets hints of his character very early on, doesn't narrate to himself to the point of annoying us, and has a genuine goal he's trying to accomplish, as opposed to just looking around and doing jack. You do truly buy the captain is slowly cracking, and terrified over the vague fate of his men, since Bob Cummings delivers such a tense performance.
I've never seen any planes like that before. I've never seen any jets. Jets? Jet aircraft? How'd I know about jet aircraft? This is 1943. There's no such thing as jet aircraft.
Sometimes he does overact, but I think that's more so due to the fact that he's the only main character carrying this whole arc, so he definitely makes you feel his fear and eventual breakdown. I love the feeling of loneliness both Captain Embry and this episode as a whole generates. This plot has a very Silent Hill-esque atmosphere to it, as weird events soon occur, such as finding grave sites of some of his buddies and seeing jet planes which shouldn't exist yet, as it adds these clever hints to the big twist. The derelict aircraft dubbed King 9 serves as a very unsettling place, since it looks like this ship saw some heavy damage, which our protagonist fails to remember how it went down. It helps that the King 9 was actually a real bomber aircraft used for the episode. I think a reason why not too much plot happens is because most of the budget went to renting this military vehicle. Money well spent, as it makes the tale feel real as opposed to using a fake Hollywood set. Fun trivia, this was also the first ever Twilight Zone episode where Rod Serling appears on camera at the beginning of the story, rather than doing his off-screen voiceover. It literally wasn't until season 2 where the Watcher at last showed up at the opening and closing of his Tales of Suspense, a choice which marked the show's iconic status. I'm glossing over most of the story, mostly because not a lot happens until the end. Embry repeatedly fails to locate his dead buddies, explores the ship ruins, imagines seeing lost allies, experiences some odd Netherrealm moments, and eventually breaks down when it becomes too much. At first, all of these things seem like they're unimportant, but in actuality, they're clues to what's really going on here. Embry collapses on the beach sands after losing his grip on sanity, as well as his health, only to reawaken at the veteran hospital, where we get to our twist ending. It was all just a dream. This entire time, Embry was in a recurring nightmare triggered by his PTSD, and he's been imagining being at the battlefield where his friends fell in battle. You see, back in World War II, Embry was supposed to lead his men on a mission in the African front, but suddenly got too sick for the mission, so he was relieved of duty while his men carried it on without him. But alas, their bomber was shot down in battle, where all his friends died, and the captain lived by pure bad luck. Ever since then, Embry has been plagued with survivor's guilt, blaming himself for not standing by them in battle, and he had a mental breakdown, ending up in the hospital. The scary nightmare beach and his inability to escape it are the symbolic representation of his guilt for surviving that fateful day. Embry imagines that if he had been there, then he could have done something to prevent his unit's demise. However, in his nightmare, he can never accomplish anything because in reality, it's a reminder that there's nothing he could have done to save them. Not to sound corny, but this twist honestly made me rethink the whole episode, viewing it in a whole new light than before, since the whole thing was a metaphor for his survivor's guilt. Every time we saw Embry accomplish nothing in the journey is really how he feels on the inside, because he believes their deaths were his fault, and that he wants to do something in a vain hope of bringing them back. But ultimately, King 9 will not return.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
This twist was so impressive because it makes rewatching the episode an entirely different story, as several of the scenes take on a different meaning now when you realize it's Embry's inner depression.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. Rest in peace, buddy.
I love this twist, since it made a simple story shockingly explode into a deeper look into the world of a guilty conscience, and sums up a person's feelings of emptiness inside superbly. Unfortunately, there was a double twist ending, and it's a tad confusing. The veteran doctors inform Embry the truth, that this was all in his mind and everything gets a logical explanation, until a nurse returning some of Embry's possessions accidentally drops a shoe where some beach sand spills out. I don't like this extra twist, since it basically implies that what we saw wasn't a dream and the captain really did travel to a macroverse dimension where he can try to save his dead men, which makes no sense. I mean, didn't they die in an actual war? How is Embry portal jumping to a dream world where he still can't find them somehow a good ending? I know it's the Twilight Zone and all, but I kind of prefer the path where he works to resolve his issues instead of dumping this magic stuff at the last sec, since it just blurs the message. This element is just kind of confusing, and while Serling attempts to go for a vague ending where the episode could have been a dream or could have been than real magic, it's simply weak and unneeded. Regardless, I do consider this a shockingly greater episode than I thought. Despite a slow first act, the ending absolutely turns it on the epic switch and gave us a truly thought-provoking nightmare on how one feels over the loss of loved ones. So, I grant this mission a 9 out of 10. See what I did there? Seriously though, I strongly recommend seeing this fable, because it's possibly one of the strongest Twilight Zone tales I've ever seen, as it gives a creative premise, unnerving dread, a cool setting, feels like Castaway times Jacob's Ladder, and a rather deep look into a relatable concept. King 9 Will Not Return is a successful treasure hidden underneath the sands of a sweet saga.
Did I go back to my plane?
In your mind. That's how you went back. Only in your mind.
Only in my mind. The Twilight Zone.